Hi there. This is Lindsey Whitmore with Divinely Driven, and today I'm bringing us our Divinely Driven moment. It came from my quiet time this morning. I was sitting there and I'm in 1 Samuel in chapter 15, and I was just really taken back. It starts off with Saul, and we know that Saul was the king that the people basically demanded that they have, and since God wasn't enough, Samuel at the time prayed, and God said, fine, give them what they want, give them a king. And Samuel went about and he chose Saul. And Saul had his good points, but he also had a lot of bad points. And one of them was that he really didn't follow after God the way he had opportunity to do. So Psalm, I'm also in Psalms, but in 1 Samuel 15, verses 1, it says, one day Samuel said to Saul, "It was the Lord who told me to anoint you as king of his people Israel. Now listen to this message from the Lord. This is what the Lord of Heaven's army has declared. I have decided to settle the accounts with the nation of Amalek," or I said it wrong, "for opposing Israel when they came from Egypt. Now go and completely destroy the entire nation, men, women, children, babies, cattle, sheep, goats, camels, and donkeys." So Saul immediately starts mobilizing, and we see where he takes some action steps to obey God through Samuel. And in verse 7, it says, "Then Saul slaughtered the Amalekites." Okay, yeah, I'm not really good at saying that, but read it for yourself. "From all the way to Shur, east of Egypt. He captured Agag, their king, but completely destroyed everyone else. Saul and his men spared Agag's life and kept the best of the sheep and goats and cattle, the fat calves and the lambs, everything, in fact, that appealed to them. They destroyed only what was worthless or of poor quality." And something that really struck me, this is also the same chapter when God stripped away his legacy from Saul's line and was ready to give it to somebody else's. And something to understand is Saul never truly chose his own faith. It was always, when you read it, the God of Samuel, your God, your God. It was never his God. And he was so, prideful. He had humility about him, but he was also so prideful. He was really more content with making himself look good and pleasing people. So a lot of times the things that he was doing that looked obedient were really just religious to make himself look good. And this was a test. This was almost like a final test by way of command. And he chose to interpret it. He interpreted his own way, which benefited him. God didn't tell him to take anything, right? He told him, "This is what I've commanded you. Now go and completely destroy the entire nation." And he specifically named everything. But Saul, in his wisdom, chose differently. He chose to keep what was appealing to him, what would be beneficial to him. And I just wrote down here in my journal, God's response, it triggered a memory of reading in Genesis, and it immediately made my heart drop because I remember God's words so poignantly in Genesis 6:6. When he's talking about the wickedness that he's witnessing after he's made everything perfect, but the people have chosen to do things. And it says in Genesis 6:5, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw everything they thought and imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry he had made them and put them on earth. It broke his heart. And when I read that, I can't believe I forgot that verse, It is highlighted, but it's not something that I ponder on, breaking God's heart. And here we are again in Samuel. And in 1 Samuel 15:10, he's saying a very similar line. He says, I am sorry that I ever made Saul king, for he has not been loyal to me. He has refused to obey my commands. God's heart was broken again. And this time we see what that manifested through the man of Samuel, because Samuel, it goes on to say that he cried out to God all night long, and that after he obeyed God to take away his kingdom and set things straight, that he mourned him the rest of his life. He was sad about that. Saul was full of buts. He tried justifying all of his actions. When you read through 1 Samuel and you read all of his accounts, he's given so many opportunities to do the right thing, to obey. In the end, all of his actions that he thought were good counted as disobedience, defiance, and complete disloyalty to God. God's command to Saul, this was another correlation I had when reading it. God's command to Saul was very similar to Jesus' command to us. God's command to Saul was, I have decided, now go. And Jesus' command to us, it starts off with the Great Commission, Matthew 28. And he starts with, all authority has been given. Therefore, all authority has been given to me. And I translate that, I have decided then, all power has been given to me, now go. And it just made me start thinking, how are we choosing to interpret God's commands? Are we truly being obedient to what he's told us to do? Because all of us have something that he has said through his word. We've had convictions, and maybe we've sat on or waited for. And maybe it is the Great Commission, that we don't really correlate that with walking as a disciple. We think that our relationship with him is just him and I, but we don't realize that there's a whole horizontal, which is all about his people and how we're supposed to be connecting his people to him at all times, by the way that we live, by the way that we speak, the way that we think, the way that we act. Everything should be a pursuit of glorifying God. So how are we choosing to interpret his command? Are we breaking God's heart by choosing to neglect or dissect his commands? Because we really love that idea of knowledge. Like, I need to know more before I actually go and do something for him. And he's just saying, you just need to know me, and you just need to go and tell people about me, and I'll do the rest. I'll teach you as you go. It's a lifetime of hands-on training, in a sense, So I was just thinking on all of these things, and I wanted to share it with you, because I don't know if there's anyone like myself out there that when God hits us, when we hear like certain things and it reveals in us, then we know that we're not alone. There's always somebody else that feels the same way. There's always somebody else that has the same experience. And we have a great opportunity right now to get it right. We have a great opportunity to honor God with everything that we do, hold nothing back for ourselves. And all we have to do is pray to him. He's patient with us. He doesn't want any of us to perish. He wants us all to come to repentance, to say, you know what, I did hear you, and I'm sorry I didn't go, but today's a new day, and you've given me breath in my lungs, and I'm going to go for you, Lord. Full on, no regrets, no retreats, and no returns. For your glory. Let it be as he's already said it to us, and he'll be with us always, even to the end of this age. Thank you.